Hi everyone. My name is Joris.
I'm Anant.
We work for Julia Hub. This is completely unrelated to Julia Hub. We work on Julia Sim. We use some of this. We use the tool we're going to talk about to support some of our processes, but that's where the similarities end. So we're going to talk about today is automated dependency management specific to Julia. And the renovating thing is, well, very apt, but it's also the tool that we're talking about is called Renovate, hence, you know. So like any good story, at least related to Julia, this starts with a nerd snipe. Also, again, Mose was sort of at the source of this, asking about 8 months ago, like about Renovate, some dependency update manager, similar to Dependabot, and there's been some pull requests open for a long time, or not a pull request, an issue, like asking for support, but it's been stalling for years. I was wondering if it could be a replacement for CompatHelper, or maybe just being a wrapper around it. At the next point, Avik sort of goes CC Bugler, which is my nick. So that's when I got pulled in. Luckily for Mose, this also happened. So he, the maintainer, Reese Arkins, of Renovate, Mose asks, like, is there a way to make this happen? Do you need help with anything? And he just goes, well, you do it. So now I've been using Renovate for a long time, mostly combined with GitLab, because it supports many different platforms, typically to manage like JavaScript and TypeScript dependencies, some GitLab CI dependencies, Docker, stuff like that. And so it's a core tool that I use, so I've always wanted Julia support in it. Like, it's been on my list to do for years, but this was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, so to finally just hop in it. And so within the Julia Sim team as well, we sort of use Renovate to manage these front-end dependencies, stuff like that. So yeah.
So real quick, let's first start out by answering the questions that Mose had for us. Starting off with, what is Renovate? So Renovate, as Joris mentioned, is a dependency management solution. It's primarily written entirely in TypeScript, and it can be compared with CompatHelper and Dependabot, which we'll get to in a minute. It is AGPL licensed. It was started in 2016, and it was also acquired by Mend, which is an open source company which is an open source security company. It was acquired in 2019. It's available in 3 formats. One is a CLI, which can be used on any CI platform that's running a self-hosted instance, or it can also be run locally. We typically use it in the CLI form in Julia Hub and also for our personal projects. It's also available as Docker container images. There is also a free public GitHub app, which we'll sort of be walking through and showing you how you can use in a live demo. Sure, live demos are great, right? Nothing can go wrong. And there's also a paid offering if you want to use it for your enterprise needs. So this is sort of a demo pull request that shows how Renovate opens up a PR. So you can see multiple metrics here. One is essentially a quick overview of the kind of changes that are being brought about. There's also release notes that are included, which the package authors themselves include while making a release, and breaking changes and so on and so forth, right? Yep. Here's what the dependency dashboard shows up like. This is essentially a go-to place where you can see all the dependencies that are going to get updated. And some more features of Renovate, right? For starters, Renovate is extremely configurable. And by that, I mean extremely. You can configure it down to as granular level as you can, right from when you schedule the updates to what kind of packages get the updates, what kind of packages you don't want to get updates for. It works very well within mono repo settings, which is something that CompatHelper doesn't really cover very well. It also has shareable configurations, which is something that we are sort of seeing an emerging trend, right? As in with SIML ecosystem, where we are moving towards more centralized CI setups for bigger organizations, so it gets easier to track things.
Yeah, so that is personally actually one of my more favorite subjects. Right? One of the things that always annoys me about many CI processes is like copying stuff everywhere. Those that might have seen my talk last year on GitLab CI processes, that might seem familiar. So I really like this sort of, there are just two central ways to sort of have centralized configuration for Renovate. One is it respects if you have like a top-level .github repo in your organization and you put configuration in that, then it just applies to everything underneath that, so you only have to configure things once. That's nice. And what is also quite, what I also like is you can have these configurations, you can ship them as NPM packages. Or they don't even have to, actually NPM is deprecated, scratch that. You can put them up on a GitHub repo or a GitLab repo and it will just fetch the configuration from there and then just apply it to whatever project you're working on. One other really nice feature that I like is custom managers. So what I often run into is when writing CI/CD pipelines, GitHub Actions, GitLab CI, doesn't really matter, is that I need to keep track of certain tools that I use, like Julia Formatter or anything else that I want to use this very specific version of, but I don't want that in my project toml or in a separate project toml. It's just annoying. I want to know where that version is right where I use it. So one of the things that the custom manager stuff is really nice about is that you can define custom dependencies, sort of. So you can know, like, that thing, that string over there in that file somewhere in my repository, that's actually a version you need to maintain for that dependency. And from then onwards, it just keeps that stuff in sync as well. So that's a really nice thing of, I personally really like that. And we'll actually see that in action just a bit later. It can do stuff like, typical things you'd expect, lock file maintenance, so, your package lock, your manifest toml would be able, maybe, if it has Julia support, I don't know. It has grouped updates, right? Many times, like Anant mentioned, like in the SciML ecosystem, there might be groups of packages you want to update all at once. You can define that. There's many, actually, like, it comes baked in with many like custom monorepo or things that need to be grouped together. Obviously, not for Julia at this point. You can, as Anand also mentioned, updating can be, or updates can be scheduled as granularly as you want, like from a month or once every 2 months or every day or as soon as stuff comes out. So that's quite nice. It releases very often. It uses semantic release, so basically every pull request that does anything that's a feature or a fix gets immediately released. Community is helpful, which we like, right, if you need help. And yeah, it's a really mature product. So next up, we just want to walk you through a quick demo, sort of how do you get this set up, typically. So we'll be sort of interleaving back and forth a bit because we need to wait occasionally. So we'll be coming back to the slides in between. So what we're going to demo is how we add this to a. Let's see if this actually works like this. OK, let's do it like this. So I have a little demo repository here. That demo repository has a package JSON for NPM, which includes a single dependency. It contains a single dependency. For those that aren't familiar with NPM, right? So the caret means it needs to stay within. I want it to be compatible within version 35. So this is one dependency it's declaring. Then the other dependency this thing has is, well, that's too big, is in here. It's a GitHub action, which has a dependency, which we've actually, I've pinned the action, right, which is to a specific Git shell, which is typically right, sort of best practice to do, so you don't run into supply chain attacks instead of pinning to a tag. And you see this nice helpful version here that I like to keep putting in here for myself, so I remember what version I'm actually using instead of having to look up the SHA every single time. So we'll sort of let Renovate loose on this repository and see what it does, sort of to give you a feeling of what it does, how it differs from something like Dependabot or CompatHelper. So to do that is it's quite simple, right? You go to the Renovate GitHub app, you hit install, which then takes you to where do you want to install it? Well, in this case, I want to install it in my own organization for a select repository. So you can install it globally as well. So that's the one. Yeah. Just scroll down a bit. Now, if you use the GitHub app, I do have to sort of say that. I knew this was going to go wrong. You'll need to agree to the terms of service by mend. Shouldn't be too much difficult stuff in there. We tend to use it on different platforms as well, so we tend to self-host. But in this particular case, we wanted to show this off. So let me just quickly sign in. Security best practices. All right. That's that. So it just fetches some stuff over from GitHub. And basically, we get dropped into the Mend app, which is provides you an overview of all the projects you're managing. You can already see that it started to sort of renovating our project. So if you go in, and it's probably take a second, we should oh no, this is the wrong repo. We should see a configure renovate. Well, I'm going to close this one. Well, I don't want Dependabot. So we get a nice PR that's going to tell us how it's going to onboard, what changes it's going to make to our repository. It tells us the package files that it detected, which is very convenient, right? Because occasionally you run into a situation where you go like, why are you not keeping track of certain dependencies? You just go into this dependency dashboard, which echoes the sort of similar information, so you can see the dependency that it actually finds. Then it's going to say, like, this is the standard configuration. This actually automatically updates if you change it. If you have your own configuration that you use for your organization, that will be reflected here as well. And then it tells you what it's going to do. Something's messed up. But anyway, we'll just keep going. So it actually tells you, like, I'm going to open up these pull requests. So it's going to update the checkout action. And then it's going to file 2 update PRs, one to bring the Renovate version up to the most recent version that is available within the 35 range and within 37. And then the major upgrade to V37. So it's nicely separating those out as well. So I'm just going to merge this. And we're going to wait a bit because it needs to open up some PRs, which will take a while. So we'll just quickly move over back to the slides. And I'll hand it over to Anant for a bit.
Yep. So I think in some essence, we answered the first part of the question. What is Renovate? Technically, how does it work? And I think now we should probably just discuss how it holds up against the alternatives, which are primarily in Julia land, CompatHelper, and Dependabot. Well, not really Dependabot, right? Because until very recently, they didn't accept any new ecosystems. This is up until the last 6 months or so. Dependabot is exclusive to GitHub only. You don't have the kind of granular scheduling for when you want to trigger these updates available on that. You can't also run, being GitHub exclusive means that you can't also run it on other CI platforms. So basically, people run things on GitLab and Atlassian and stuff. They don't have access to something like this. It also doesn't provide a default groups, which is essentially something that makes it harder for you to run it on mono repos. And CompatHelper is Julia only. So for instance, in the demo that we'll walk through, you'll also see that the checkout action will get automatically updated by Renovate, which is not something that CompatHelper does, right? CompatHelper only cares about your Julia packages in total. CompatHelper is also less featureful. In comparison with Renovate, there are many complicated cases that CompatHelper doesn't deal very well with, particularly log file management and stuff. I mean, you could argue that it's a language level thing and that you might run into it with Renovate as well. But with Renovate, you at least have the primitives that are necessary to get something like that in place. And it's not as much of a lift. CompatHelper also directly uses PKG. Our Renovate configuration that we're going to be demoing right now doesn't directly use PKG. But we estimate that at some point it will. And we'll also get to that later part in the talk.
All right, so let's check back on our pull requests to see if they're actually there. Yeah, so one of the things I'll note, right, is that we specifically put in, like, the Dependabot is MIT license, which might be a thing for, a good thing for some people. That could be a pro. Renovate isn't, right? It's AGPL license, so you can't make money off of it, of hosting it yourself. Back to my demo. Refresh. We should have some pull requests. Yeah, this is the wrong repo. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So we can see that it filed a dependency update for Renovate 35, right? So it keeps it within that same major version. We get this nice we get the release notes, which in this case are very long, so I'm going to close them again. One of the nice features that it also has, if you provide, if the backend, sort of the data source, as we'll get into what it is a bit later, So NPM provides timing information about releases, and they actually keep a dashboard that they include into the pull request where this is how old it is, this is how well adapted it is, this is for all the CI, for all the pull requests that we filed the pull request for that actually had passing CI on the first try. So this sort of gives you some confidence about, can I merge this without looking at it again if my tests pass? So I'm confident. Well, so in this case, because we actually had the caret in here, right? It only updated the package lock. Not going to look at the diff. It's going to be too big. I don't need to approve. So we're just going to merge that in. Now, unfortunately, demo effect. We didn't ask hard enough. No, we don't want that. That's unfortunate. That was supposed to work. It didn't. So what we'll see is actually in the onboarding configuration, we saw that it was going to open 4 pull requests, and it only opened 2. So by default, Renovate is rate limiting what it's doing, so it doesn't overwhelm your CI, which is typically a good thing, right? You don't want your CI getting hammered by it opening 20 pull requests. So these are rate limited, which is where this dependency dashboard comes in useful again. You can actually just go in, and because this is one of the advantages of using the app, right? If you're using a CLI, you're going to have to do this on a schedule yourself. You're running on a cron job. Running the app makes it responsive to webhooks. So you can, if I click these, if I enable these two to indicating that I want PRs for these, it's going to open them up in the back end. If we go into the mend dashboard, we can actually see that it kicked off, or we should be able to see that it kicked off a few new runs. So we'll, again, have to wait a little bit for that to kick in, but and I'll come back to it because I want to show this one in action, what it does here. So let's move back to the slides for just a bit while we wait for those PRs to get opened. Oops. And dive into something completely different. Been a bit of a sales pitch so far. So let's dig into a bit of this slightly more technical, not too technical. What do we need to add Julia support to Renovate? So Renovate is very orthogonal code base, which is quite nice. And to be able to add a new language or a new ecosystem, language is not entirely accurate, right, because it's package ecosystems, you need to implement 3 things: a data source, a versioning strategy, and a manager. And for Julia, well, we have to do all 3. Right? We need a data source to know where to pull packages from. We need a versioning strategy because Julia's versioning is not the same as NPM or any other, at least as far as I know, any other package ecosystem. And we need a manager. And a manager is basically the thing that knows where are, by default, for certain types of projects within an ecosystem, what are the default locations where dependencies are being tracked. So in our case, a project toml and a manifest.toml. So just sort of to not immediately show what we're currently capable of doing, it works. Yay! Can you use it? No, not yet. It even works for like properly private package servers. I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but it works. So this actually pulls it out of the Julia Hub registry. This is a private Julia Hub package. Well, it's not private. You can get it, but you need to have access to that registry. So this also support it. You can see we pull the nice little change logs for HTTP as well. You get a link back to the original package. So what is the actual current state? As I said, unfortunately, you can't currently use it. The pull request is open. It's been open for a while. I needed to fix and fine-tune a few things. It's a consequence of trying to get something into a very big code base that's very mature. It takes a bit longer. So as I mentioned, private package servers are supported. The dependency update pull requests, as we sort of showed, they support change logs and links back to your project websites as long as you have the repo field filled in your project toml. I know what to do for versioning. I've dug into it already. Apparently, for those that didn't know yet, or at least the way I found out, Julia's versioning is mostly a mix of NPM's versioning and Conan's versioning. They share similarities. Not sure why, but that's how it works. And then it has its own stuff. And we just need to work on a manager just to get started. Well, let me just quickly go back to the pull requests, see if we got the new ones up, just to show. Yeah. So this is one of the nice things where it actually does separate major versions, but it does skip the ones that you don't care about because you probably don't care about upgrading the 36 if 37 is out. So you can stay behind on an older version and keep getting updates for that while also just getting eventually upgraded to a next version of a package. So one of the nice things I particularly like, I'm not sure why it's doing, oh, it's, OK. This demo did not do it well enough with the demo, not pray to the demo gods. So what this was supposed to do is actually update the commit SHA and then automatically also update the comments. Not sure why it didn't work. That's what it typically does. So if you have these types of comments behind it, it just keeps it in sync with the commit SHA, which is very nice from a documentation perspective. So demo failed.
What can go wrong in the live demo?
4 minutes. Oh, taking too long. So we can't actually do, we don't have a manager yet. The nice thing, as I mentioned about the custom manager stuff, is you can actually implement something like this, which you just add to your repository, and then now it supports Julia, if you, granted you have the data source merged. Well, it can manage stuff inside a project Tomo. Let me rephrase it that way. OK, I'm going to hand it over to Anant real quick.
Yeah, so in this entire process of trying to figure out Renovate's code base, how we integrate it with Julia, how we can add Julia support for it, we've sort of come across a few big hurdles and a few very convenient things, and this is basically all of that. So the first one is package server starballs are all or nothing. If you want something for a given registry, you get the entire tarball, which, if you don't know, is about 7 MB zipped. And when it's unzipped, it's about 250 MB. So anytime you want a dependency update or you trigger one, you're pulling in 250 MB, which is not optimal, obviously. There is also multiple ways you can interact with registries. So we decided to go with package server because that makes it platform agnostic. You can pull from GitHub, GitLab, Julia Hub, wherever you like. The Renovate code base is really big. It's about 600K lines of code. But it also helps that Renovate's different abstractions are very well orthogonally separated, which makes it much, much easier to contribute to. There's also very, very extensive HTTP request mocking library setup with Renovate, which we can use for writing tests, and that makes TDD easier. Also, the third one is a personal gripe of mine, which I have an issue open for as well, which is basically that PKG doesn't support resolution of environments without instantiating the project first. Even if you try resolving it, it downloads the entire packages itself, which just adds more to the latency. And it also makes log file management harder, which is one of the reasons why CompatHelper also doesn't give log file management, as far as I know. So some advice or requests, especially if you're looking to integrate with Renovate in your code bases. First and foremost is stay up to date. Things move fast, especially in Julia land, even more so in SciML land. I think we have about 3 SciML releases every day, as Chris was saying earlier. So staying up to date is very important, obviously. And the thing with CompatHelper is it doesn't always keep you up to date. CompatHelper's PRs are, by default, they use the GitHub token in a lot of repositories, which means that for the PRs that they open, CI tests don't actually run. So you don't entirely know if it works or not, right? And if you don't believe me, just look at ordinary DFQ, modeling toolkit, or any big repository. But with Renovate, you use a dedicated token, or you use a GitHub app itself, which ensures that CI runs every time. In addition to that, you also get all these nice metrics that Joris mentioned out earlier, right? With adoption, age, the confidence in that particular update, which just makes updating to a newer version a lot more easier. Please provide change logs. Change logs are great. They help people who are updating downstream. It makes it a much more easier and less painful process. I know that fix, make things work, commits are great, but then it doesn't really help a lot when you're trying to debug what went wrong where in an upstream package. Pin dependencies, having better defined compats for dependencies will greatly help people keep up to date. And also using downgrade CI. I know downgrade CI is a contested topic, but having it is better than not having it at all. And if you're interested in helping, please reach out to either of us. This is something we are actively working on as well on our own time. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions? All right. In the absence of questions, I have one myself. Have you noticed any Julia packages in the ecosystem, public packages, have been using Renovate as part of their CI and workflows?
Do you want to take that, or should I? I'm OK either way.
Well, I don't know. I know mine use it, but not for Julia support, obviously. But no, I'm not.
I think it's something once it's in a more production-ready state. I think it's something we sort of want to slowly start rolling out. Yep.
So this isn't a question, but you mentioned the package doesn't support, PKG doesn't support resolving manifests without instantiating them. So there is an environment variable called Julia PKG precompile auto. Did you try this?
That's not the same thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't precompile, but it still downloads everything.
Yeah.
Oh, OK.
So in your depot/packages folder, the packages still get pulled in.
OK.
Yeah.
Okay. I get it. Thanks.
Another question?
Oh, no. Christopher's asking a question.
So regarding the PKG and instantiation when you resolve, it should be fairly easy to fix. It's just that if you have packages that you're added by URL, for example, you need to download those to actually do the resolve. But what we could do is you download those if they exist, and then you do the resolve, and then you don't download anything from the PKG server. And I guess in most cases, you only have version dependencies, so in that case, it doesn't matter. So I think it should be fairly easy to fix.
That is optimistic to hear.
So just sort of to clarify, that wouldn't even work right now, right? Because only in a manifest, because you can't depend on something in a project only. That would only affect lock files.
Yeah, so that would only be the case if you had a manifest that has a URL added.
Does it still hold for the new sources thing?
Yeah, you still have to download it, because otherwise you can't have access to the project file, which defines the dependencies and compatibility.
But a sources thing would allow URLs, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, but you still need to download those.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure.
Even if you want to do a dry resolve or whatever you want to call it.
All right.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much. Let's have another round of applause.